Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from wherever you are joining us right here. My name is Jason Walls from QA Cafe, and I'm your host today with Yevgeny and Brendan, who will be taking over as soon as I'm done introducing them and and talking all about how to build secure broadband CPE using the stuff that Purple Foundation has been working on. This is one of the core working groups of the Purple Foundation, and they for all of their hard work, it feeds back into everything that Purple's doing because turns out that security is probably the most important thing, and we've seen results to that. There's actually a broadband forum survey that came out recently where it was about a lot of different things, but one of the questions was what the most important things about the CPE were to operators, and it was like 100 operators, and I think the security of the CPE was like 75%, and the next best one was like 50%. It was by far the most important thing. So operators really do care about it. And so, Purple Foundation's been doing a lot of great work in this area, and we're going to learn about it today. So, a little bit about your presenters today. Yevgeny and Brendan are both on the security working group at the Purple Foundation. They both work for operators, Yevgeny at Verizon and Brendan at Vodafone. And so much of their time is consumed with Purple Foundation work. um, but that has sort of made them experts in this subject. So I they're very entertaining guys, and if you have any questions for them during it, we are using Zoom for this webinar. So there is a Q&A box in your Zoom control panel that is the preferred method of asking questions. Type in them there, and we will all see them. Um, and we'll get to the ones that we can get to and respond offline to the ones that we can't get to. But if you do have questions like during the thing, don't feel like you have to wait till the end. If there's something that they're talking about, you have an immediate question, I'll chime in and ask a couple things. But please do use that Q&A box. There's no live demos here, so you should be able to see everything that's going on. But in the event that you can't, you can use Zoom's Zoom features to make things bigger if you have trouble seeing any of the text or anything like that. Um, with that, I will give things over to Yevgeny. Go ahead and steal my sharing.
Well, you have to probably stop because it says that I cannot take over. But yeah, let me just introduce my, I'll share it. There you go. Hopefully everybody can see.
Mhm.
Yep.
So, hello everybody. I would like to start with a little note on the fact that we had very little time to present our security group in Dallas, and of course during the years we didn't have any chance to present anything that we do in a larger audience like this. So it is essential that we show what security group does and what our thinking was. And our centralized thinking was exactly around the CPE. How do we build a secure broadband gateway? What we will do today is we're going to go through a very detailed agenda for a very short time. Hopefully, everybody can catch up with the speed of talking that we will have. I'll talk a little bit about who this webinar should be. Then we will have a quick introduction to security work group, and then we will start from the beginning: hardware, manufacturing data, etc. So we will go through Purple OS CPE boot, for flash partitioning, and then we'll get to system security and runtime security, high-level API, one of the essentials in Purple, moving towards TR-181-based management, and expanding the system, the ecosystem with a lot of applications, and what we're lacking at the moment from security perspective and what we want to have. So to start with, who should be listening on our webinar. Hopefully, later on in the media, they will be able to catch up if they are not here. But on the right, I show the wheel of the industry that we have and the participants in this industry. I'm not going to repeat everything there, but what we should know is that it's essential for operators of all tiers, system on chip vendors, contract manufacturers, original equipment manufacturers, platform and software integrators, software solution providers, add-on module manufacturers. I'm reading off the list, but I'll tell you what, everybody involved in the industry should be considering all the guidelines that we created here. And we created these guidelines with the help of all the members from all members of the industry. Meaning that we had a small but very efficient group to create documents and to publish them on the web. And what is important is it can all go down to even to the truck roll people out knowing how to protect the customer information and how to work with it. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Brendan to introduce us to the standards and to the work that we have done in the Purple Foundation Security Group. And I will take over later in the second part. So please, Brendan, take it over.
Thanks, Evgeny. Right, so where do we start with security? Security largely is processes and practices, right? So if you have those things in place, then you have a good base to start from. And you start with, we started with standards because there weren't really any standards in this area that we could find that applied across the board. And we started out with the device security requirements, which we have published, and they were built with the input from security vendors and operators and SOC vendors and stuff like that. So they're quite broad. They were designed to be relatively operator agnostic so that an operator could take this standard and go, well, I can just layer my extra requirements on top of that because every country has different requirements, every operator has different requirements. And we have we worked on the secure manufacturing data. That's where we wanted a standard way of applying the per device data to the device in a secure manner, whether that's MAC addresses or certificates or anything. And then we moved on to secure boot and standard flash layout. And those last three all work together because what's really good when you have a standard is also a reference implementation. And the Purple Foundation has worked on a reference implementation of secure boot. And as far as I'm aware, most of what has been done to build this reference implementation has actually been upstreamed as well. So we're also working on some future stuff. We're working on packet inspection. There is an implementation of that, and is working on the high-level API standard. Working on different firmware management, the different subsystem management firmware. There's lots of other things there that you can see at the bottom, like improving the VPN capability in the TR-181 data model, general hardening of the base underneath Purple OS, which is OpenWRT, and develop the security in the development life cycle and the security incident response process. To move on, please. Right, so it's device security requirements. I've already gone into this. It covers pretty much everything in a broad form for the security of the device. Different vendors and different operators have different requirements in this, and they all fed into this document. And it also serves as a primer to the security of the device as well, and how to manage that. And you can see the diagram of the categorization model there. Next slide. So the Secure Manufacturing Data Standard, as Evgeny has stated there, protecting manufacturing data against forgery. So basically, it is basically a device tree blob. The standard is quite well known. The device tree standard is quite well known. These are extra fields that are added in, and it's stored in a secure manner in the system and picked up built into the boot process. And it's protected against forgery, as it states there. So we are considering a data model method to update this, but that's in future work. Next slide, please. A slide about where this fits in. This is just basically what I've been saying. So as Evgeny has stated at the bottom, no backdoors allowed. We actually have a requirement in this. Some governments might not like this, but in general, we definitely don't want backdoors in our systems. All right, next one. So this is a basic template. This is an example of what the secure manufacturing data looks like. And for those of you familiar with device tree, this would be very familiar, but these are the fields that have been introduced. And you can see all of that on the in the published specification. Keep going. Right. So I mentioned Secure Boot. This comes in two parts. We actually have a white paper on how Secure Boot works, which is a very, very good introduction into all of the technology that is involved and the process that this works in, and all of the processes for verification and encryption if you want it. In our particular case, for the requirements, the reference implementation is based on U-Boot, and it is specified as the last stage bootloader. So it doesn't have to bring up the silicon. We rely on pre-stages to bring up the silicon and do everything else that needs to be done before U-Boot comes up. But U-Boot is what we call the purple compliant bootloader. And as I mentioned before, everything that's required, as far as I'm aware, has been upstreamed into U-Boot. It has lots of requirements in there. So
I did just post a link to that white paper, by the way, in the chat if anybody wants
that white
to
paper is
download it
really
from
good. It's really good reading if you're not aware of all of the intricacies in Secure Boot. There's a lot of information that was contributed by one of the operators, really detailed document about Secure Boot. And we generalized that to make it non-operator and non-OEM or non-SOC specific. So it's a little bit easier to digest for those people that might not be invested in a particular SOC vendor. So, and as I said, it goes into the root of trust. It's got a lot about how everything is verified and authenticated, methods to make sure that things aren't changed on the fly. And we also talk about secure upgrade processes, the possibility of refurbishment. Although we fall short of an actual standard for refurbishment because there isn't one at the moment, and that's something we will probably look at. And we talk about the use of a trusted execution environment. Now, not everybody uses that. We don't specify that you have to have either a crypto processor or a TEE because they can be a cost issue for various different operators. So it's just one that they might be in there as recommendations. Next slide. So, the bootloader depends on a particular flash layout, and the other thing that depends on a particular flash layout is the upgrade process. Upgrade and its and possibly even you have to take into account the possibility of downgrading, but not to known bad versions of firmware. So we talk about that as well. We utilize flash image tree for flattened image tree format. I think that's what FIT stands for, if I remember rightly. And we talk about the two different sides of things. So you've got managed flash and which is eMMC, and we talk about unmanaged flash, so basic NAND. Now you get some you on NAND flash, you generally want to run something that can manage the bad block table for you, and the general file system in use there is UBFS. So we talk about the use of that. On the eMMC, you generally don't want something with the overhead of UBFS, so you would probably run the ext4 or whatever your preferred file system is. I think we generally state the use of ext4, but I guess people could choose something else if they wanted to. So there's the actual diagram of the flash partition table for NAND flash. Now, one thing to note, it doesn't. So you can see that there's an undefined area. Now, this is kind of like a minimum partition layout because we don't specify exactly how many partitions there has to be. It's just you can have additional partitions. We don't say you can't have more. So there's definitely room for adding more. But this is just the minimum of what the bootloader and the upgrade process wants to look for. So, and then that's the same for the eMMC, and that shows you've got partition A to partition N, which shows you that it has the allowance in there for as many partitions as you really want. So, what's next? I think this is yours, Evgeny. Yes, this is yours. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Brendan. It was a great galloping through the material, but I hope that everybody understands the scope of it because it's much more work done than we can present in the limited time that we have. Now, let's look at the system level security. And what is important is that we never discussed in other work groups in details the low-level API security. What is important about system level security is that we need to consider this from the perspective of the kernel itself, from the perspective of services and system applications. And then we have to go all the way up to application layer where we may actually have containerized solutions expanding the ecosystem. So let's start with the fact that the Linux kernel is a very rich source of limiting the networking, limiting and implementing security policies that we would like to have, and we have. There is a direction to go to Firewall 4 soon, and we're looking into having this particular direction done. Although Firewall 4 or NF tables is capable of interpreting the rules from Firewall 3, we still have to have some strategy how to move to Firewall 4 and how to have all our TR-181 agents complying with that, especially the firewall manager. Then I would like to point out one of the greatest work that we have as an input, as a design, as something that will allow implementing a lot of security technologies. This is the Purple Foundation packet inspection. And I would say it's a brilliant leadership from Brendan on this initiative. Thanks to that, we have API that assures many different implementations from filtering to allowing security companies to integrate their own security solutions in Purple-based software. And also, I would like to point out that we have focused on specialization on customer security solutions. So with that said, we're looking from the gateway perspective from all the way from the hardware up, as Brandon pointed out already. So we have to consider the BSP level APIs that we will have to introduce so that uh, for those that are missing, of course, because right now we have high level API, which allows application level to drill all the way down to the BSP level and manage the box. But we have to consider expanding this to levels where we will have interaction between different applications and capabilities like communication between different applications in containers, etc. We need to also set the rules for sharing system resources with value-added services. We have done certain work on that, but again, it's a vast field because we will need to have quite a lot of considerations, what to restrict and what to allow. And
Yeah,
last
one
but
one
not, yep,
one
go
thing I'd
ahead.
like to add there is that, in the application expectation is for a minimum level of trust, right? So they start with only access to the high level API. They have no low level access. They're completely contained, unless unless access is granted. And so
That's right. Yep.
we start from that process of minimum level of trust, right? So
Yeah, and in
sorry.
this section, yeah, that's okay. Perfectly all right. I thank you very much. I appreciate the addition to all that, and it's a very good summary thought. One other thing that is lost in this particular slide is location security. So what is important is we know very well in the last requirements for Wi-Fi, in particular Wi-Fi 6 and 7, 6E and 7, there is a requirement for handling locations, and GPS APIs are necessary. We will need to develop that. But also we will need to be very mindful about security in that area. I would like to also point out that high-level API security is something very important for us. What we want to point about high-level API, it is all based on TR-181 model. We have two sides. One is local device management, and the other one is remote, which is the next slide. What is important about local device management is we need to make sure that the two ways of managing the device through Ambiorix or OBUSPA, uh, meaning through a library or an IMTP, they both have really strong rules, ACL access level security, and also system resources usage constraints. Sharing certain system resources in BSP. What is also important in this case is that IMTP in particular is it has an additional feature of restricting itself by configuring and selecting roles, basically. So MQTT topics can be configured for a particular application and for particular topics that this application can use and restrict not to use the other MQTT topics that are in the set, in the system set or the high-level API. STOMP has a very similar restriction, and we will have to consider an example there too. And of course, we will have to work with the proper working groups that, high-level API groups and vendors that have developed these technologies to accomplish that. We still need to do basically from the ground up penetration testing. We need to design it and build a strategy for it. We need to
Yeah, well, that's something I wanted to bring up about that one is that
yep. Mhm.
we're going to be starting the conversation on a certification process for security. Now that's actually that's a very hard problem. So like I said, it's going to start with a conversation. We're going to have to get input from the industry as a whole, basically. So
And compliance, basically, the
yeah,
last item also has to be in that talk about certification. So this will
yeah,
become, thank you, Brendan, this will become part of the Purple certification process. So we will have to work on security certification quite a lot because we have a lot of stuff created and put together, but we still don't have yet, we haven't started the security process for certification for certification of the security of the CPE. It's a very vast area because we will need to include everything from hardware all the way up to applications, but we will have to start somewhere. So we will start with the first step, talk about, what to include in the certification, how to set the standard there. I would like to point out to remote management, which for operators, it's essential, especially the ones that are still on CWMP and using ACS servers as the main method of remote management. Unfortunately, moving towards USB is a slow process. It may be gradual, but it's very slow, and we still need to work with CWMP and ACS and make sure that we cover all the bases there. So usually the security consists of two-side SSL authentication, meaning both the server and the client side need to be authenticated mutually. Then there is also another aspect. This is the customer privacy and security that ACS server communications provide. The scope of the ACS queries actually is limited to one box only from the perspective of the CPE. So nobody can actually go back to the server and say, give me information for something else. You can only query that particular box from the ACS server. So this is a security in its own, but it is still something that need to be considered because we need to make sure that there are no channels to hackers to open up communication with the ACS servers. Another approach that operators usually use is limiting the IP ranges to the ones that they own. So an ACS server can only query devices that are in this IP range. And we also have several methods that limiting the reach of the bad actor in operators' network infrastructures. It's specific to operators, and everyone has their audits and requirements and processes, but we need to consider that as well from a Purple perspective, and we might be still having work to do there. And USB remote management, we all know it's the most modern approach with evolving technologies and standards. So one of the best ways to do that is to look at the current broadband forum documentation if necessary to see what's covered there. But usually you have OBUSPA has security policies. There is USB server-side security as well, TLS payload encapsulation. There are multiple controller security considerations that we will also need to cover at some point. We don't have yet discussed this topic, but it will come up eventually. One of the most important things is the role of the payload security parameter and in determining the scope and the session context. So I would like to point out that we have a lot of text material put in the slides, and it might be really sort of boring to look at the text, but we needed to list every item possible that we have worked on and we have considered for the CPE deployment. So please be a bit patient and stay with us. We will continue on. Again, there's a lot of text material, but if you also have questions on any of the topics there, we would be glad to answer. So I would like to also point out to a very strong activity recently from the Tiger group for application development. It is essential to understand that ever since we promoted this particular direction, a lot of companies joined Purple for the sake of ability to create ecosystem or ecosystem components built on APIs that Purple will provide. And the more important topic here is the high-level API, like I pointed out, really important for security from security perspective, and really important, especially in this particular niche, the expanding of the ecosystem with app-level APIs. So what is important is the consideration here is that we have limited ourselves to containerized solutions, but the security can be expanded to bare bones systems running virtual machines, etc. So Purple has not gone into that area yet. We still need to consider the possibility of variety of systems out there. So a gateway can be a combination of virtual machines instead of just one particular platform. So we should be more platform agnostic from that perspective. Now, with that said, we have concentrated on containerizing solutions, and to restrict the container, we have, from security, of course, perspective, is we have thought about several aspects that the LCM and in particular LXC provides, limiting the capabilities, the kernel level capabilities that would be used, implementing a good access control level, and particular data model, and of course the one very strong method of using C groups, in particular C groups too, and later probably to sandbox the solutions into users and user and group IDs that are in higher order. And then one other important aspect is runtime ownership. So what is important is that we limit the ownership of the processes to a particular user instead of having them run as root or run with elevated privileges. Another aspect is restricting the system resources, meaning we can restrict the number of files and folders used or mapped to. We can restrict the number of file handles, pipes, and sockets used. And also, we can restrict the network transactions used. But also, it's important to know that we can apply filtering rules for a particular container solution or all the container solutions out there. Some containerized solutions may have access to our firewall by using the high-level API approach, basically, and the packet inspection API that has been introduced prior to these set of slides. And
Yeah, but an application will never have full access to the whole firewall, right? So
right.
they can request access to it to parts of the firewall through the high-level API,
right.
but so it's
exactly this is the level of restrictions that we have introduced as a philosophy. The applications that are in containers can only influence and change the firewall rules, those that they have been allowed to, first of all, and second of all, by using only the provided means, the high-level API, and in particular the low-level API packet inspection. We can also limit from security perspective, not from penetration security, but from system security and service security. We want to make sure that operators have their service not impacted by overloading the system with using system resources. So we can limit the usage of CPU to one core, even percentage of a core, limit the amount of RAM usage, storage, and also the number of transactions that can be allowed for a particular container. Also, we have considered the inter-process communications and how value-added services can use the inter-process communications with security in mind. So it is important because this is an evolving process, evolving niche for security. We have a lot to learn still there, but we are doing our baby steps, and I think we have some success there. It can be reflecting in our demos later, hopefully in the Purple Summit in Paris. Also, the BSP resources are very much limited. We have a certain initiative on the Wi-Fi front, and we didn't talk particularly on Wi-Fi. There are solutions that protect our system from Wi-Fi as well, but we also need to allow certain applications to use low-level API through high-level means, through TR-181 model, to gather CSI data, for example, for Wi-Fi sensing, or to be able to manipulate and manage the Wi-Fi stack and the networking stack together. So with that said, I can say that we can get into the networking and the networks and the namespaces, basically restrictions. Networking value-added services, it's important because all the containers might need to communicate. It's a limited compute on the CPE, so some of the applications may have compute in the cloud, which we will have to take consideration as well. So networking the value-added service implies that we will have to have a very secure way of networking a container, restricting the networking of the container to a particular routing table for the container itself, or we may have consideration of for implementing different rules for restricting the networking access, but also we will need to open communication to the system through networking if necessary, and to other such value-added services. Another strong isolation or sandboxing is the using of namespaces, particular for value-added services. What is important is that that namespace is owned, or namespaces are owned by the value-added service. They cannot be shared anywhere else, which restricts the applications to using this particular set of namespaces and not interfere with any other value-added service. I have to mention that there are corner cases and that we have to consider exceptions. This is when we have value-added services that really need particular access, particular way of interacting between value-added services or system and value-added services. So these are restrictions, but also enablers that we can provide from Purple Foundation perspective.
At the same time, on that subject, we're
Yep.
not religious about having a single process inside a container. It's quite possible to have, as we both know, the current container up there, Alex, the LCM containerization manager, is not worried about having multiple processes inside a container. It's not like Docker, where it's a religion to have a single process inside a container. So, it's so if there is that one way, if you want to have multiple functions inside a container, so that for ease of communications between them, IPC or anything like that, that they can both be in that same namespace inside that same container.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's also another possibility. Thanks, Brandon. I think it's a large topic. We cannot cover everything, but at least we want to show what work has been done and what's the direction from the perspective of Purple Foundation, and all the inputs are welcome. We welcome you to come and work with us in the security work group, and have your input from all the niches in the industry, all the standards. One thing that we're lacking and we need to pay really good attention to is lately a lot of CVEs popped up. That a CVE website has been, a CVE organization and website has been created in particular to show the common vulnerabilities and explore exposures. This means that it starts from the kernel perspective and goes even BSP drivers and all the way to application level, to where we will set our containers going through services. So what is important for us? We have to plug a new process in place to handle the CVEs in Purple. We don't have that. We haven't even talked about it in details. We have mentioned it, and we have considered also automated scanning for our code and runtime systems, but we still are doing baby steps here. Still, we have a list of things that we have listed here, basically, and we will need to consider as one of the main strategies further down the line to not only acknowledge but also take care of the CVEs ourselves, or work with SOC vendors and software providers to allow handling the CVEs. Brandon, you had something to add?
This is part of something that's being set up in the Purple Foundation at the moment, which is the maintainer organization, which is funded a year on year to with a number of people to actually do this as their job. Well, part of their job at least anyway, where they would look at reports, they would look at the software bill of materials, they would look at if any vulnerabilities came up, they would be responsible for reporting, for handling the embargo process. So that organization is being set up at the moment, and its process is being defined, but it's kind of like not really professionalizing, but really defining all of this part of the security process for all of the coding and any, as you say, vulnerability finding and stuff like that. So I think someone has actually described it as professionalizing our processes for this. So yeah.
Yes, I mean, definitely. Plus, I would say that we have to work with all the open source organizations that we're affiliated with. We need to work with all the standard organizations that we're affiliated with, and also being able to upstream Purple CVE patches to the kernel, to OpenWRT, and to any of the open source organizations that may have a relationship with us. It is very important, and we know that some of the SOC vendors, maybe most of them, are taking this very seriously. They do patching regularly, and we will need to also be notified by them about CVEs and patches that they have applied, so that we can actually take the latest possible BSP code from them and be on the cutting edge of security in Purple. We have to also consider mitigation strategies for CVE groups that we don't have yet we haven't considered, or we don't have strategy for CVEs that are surprise to us. So we will need to have that mitigation strategy coined out. It is very important that we track all the CVEs. We create a separate project probably for all the CVEs. We haven't figured that out completely as a process, but it is important that we record all the activities and we identify all the possible CVEs whether they come from identified already from outside, but we just record them in our Jira so that we have them on our radar and properly schedule them for handling or requesting handling by the proper vendors. So with that said, I just want to move to plug something. Um,
We
our
describe
dear,
this as Wouter's awesome diagram.
yes, we describe this as Wouter's awesome diagram. Wouter has recently, for this year, he joined Purple Foundation. We know him from a long time ago, but he joined Purple Foundation as an employee, as a principal architect, and we are very grateful for his work because he was able to tie the knots and to put together a lot of things that were scrambled into different fields, and he was able to join the work groups together. Thanks very much for his work and for his contribution also to the security group, which is the awesome diagram that we point here. And we
Well,
want
it's more
to
than that.
reiterate, yeah, of course, we want to reiterate on the standards and what we have been working, and they're still in evolution, and what are the next steps for us. Thank you very much, everyone. And if you have any questions, please, I will ask Jason to read them
Yes.
out, and we'll
Uh-huh.
have a chance to answer probably
Yeah.
in a
So if you
minute.
do have any immediate questions, please throw them in the Q&A box in the Zoom control panel. Um, I did have a few. I know. So we you talked about some of these principles coming from not just regulations, but also the general desire of the end users when it comes to security, because now they're sort of conscious of it too. Um, is there anything you guys would want to say on the privacy side of those things? I realize those two are very interrelated. But I know we talked about,
Yes.
for example, having ACLs for different services and stuff like that. But is there anything further that you guys would want to say about that?
Yeah, I would like to start i- and then I'll hand it to Brendan to also answer or add or answer from different aspect. So for operators, one of the important rules is the privacy of our customers. We have very strict rules, not only uh, from government organizations, but we also impose our own internal rules to be able to protect our customers, their information, their privacy, and to allow them to do whatever they like, and to um allow them to say what information can be disclosed and what not. So that's one thing. The other thing is that from privacy perspective, um, every traffic that's associated with customer data needs to be anonymized. Unfortunately, in Purple, we haven't considered anonymizing that kind of data, but it is also important to know that in Purple, we're not allowed to see such data because of that privacy concern. So we cannot really handle it in Purple because it's operator specific and rule specific, but um, all I can say is that it is a very strong protection mechanism, and it implies several different policies and rules. It's a headache for us, it's a nightmare, and I'm glad that we have that. Because if we don't have that nightmare, our own data can be exposed. And recent news actually shows breaches in different companies that are very unpleasant. When we read that, we're not gloating. We are actually feeling for the people that have been under that attack because we can be the next one.
Right.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Brandon.
There's always a balance to be had in privacy versus security. We This is one of the principles of lowest trust, least trust given to applications. Packet inspection, for instance, can be problematic in terms of like, how much data are you gathering? Are you gathering more data than you actually need for a particular function? if an application is badly designed, but it has full access to the system because it's totally integrated into a monolithic firmware, then what protection do you have against that being taken over and going rogue? If it's contained and it's permission based, then at least you have something to fall back on, something like that. If there's a problem, then the application, the container can be shut down if there's a known problem with it, right? So sort of like it's a limitation ability.
Right.
Yeah, so
Sort of like
it's kind of
if you have the power to do something, then the hacker has the power to do that too.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, the
it's
important,
always
yeah.
go on.
The important thing from our perspective is not to allow hackers to do that.
Right.
And there is a reason why operators close up the boxes, because this is the only safe way to say, no, you shall not pass.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not a believer in security by obscurity, though, right? That's
Right.
been
True.
Well,
proven.
and
Yeah.
it's not now, right?
It
I
doesn't
mean,
No,
the
work. Yeah.
gateways are
not
now the
anymore.
primary target.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I'm keen to point out is that the gateway is a primary target, right? Because the traffic, all of the traffic for a home user goes through the gateway. And that can be business traffic, right? Because so many people are still working from home. Yes, I know in a lot of countries that people are being pulled back to the office, but that's one of the things where the balance has changed.
Mhm.
But it's still people just forget how important that gateway is. And you want it to be secure, and you want it to be secure by design, not just secure by secret. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
one more thing. I just remembered, fixed wireless access is picking up speed throughout the world, I would say. And because we know that we have mobile networks that are pretty secure, that's okay. But at the same time, it's yet another way of penetrating from outside. And I'm sure that no matter how secure uh, an engineer can design a system, or a set of engineers, if you want a very big team of engineers or collaborative team of engineers throughout the world, there will be one hacker though that will be able to penetrate that. So
Yeah,
yet
that's an
another
old
consideration. Yeah,
it's an old adage, right? If you increase the functionality, you increase the attack surface.
yep.
Hmm.
So
Cat and
right, so
mouse game
you do
all
have to
over.
be careful for
Yep.
every bit of new functionality you add. You have to consider how much more am I opening up the system to someone to have a look at. So
Right.
Next
And
question.
that's sort of super important for the the stuff that, because I know we kind of went through it quickly on the slide about the value-added services and the containerized apps, but as more of that gets added to the Purple infrastructure, um, and as you
Yep.
guys know, I don't know if the audience knows, but there are more and more application vendors that are joining Purple, and that are participating in this sort of thing, and um, whether that's from a certification perspective or something else, it's extremely important that they're paying attention to what you guys are doing here as part of that
Yeah,
process, right? Because now
exactly.
they're effectively a visitor, right?
yeah, and we
Yeah.
need we need input. Are we doing things
Yeah.
the right way from their point of view? It's not just like this is the way it is. It's just we want it's a very collaborative process for us.
It's a teamwork. I
Yeah,
agree. Yeah. And
yeah.
one
So
other thing is that, yeah, we can restrict so much, but if there is a bad actor that creates an application that is with the goal of penetrating, um, we cannot really stop that. We need to
Right.
be careful, and so we can only impose the restrictions from Purple perspective, but every operator that will have access to common applications, because when they're done in the context of an operator, that is almost sure that everything is secure, even double secure. Everything is scrutinized, analyzed, even code is screened, etc. But when it comes to common applications and common value-added services, we will have to make sure that we have a process in place that outlines that a particular value-added service is approved by a particular process that screens and audits for security. That's very important.
Did get one wireless question come in, saying that both fixed wireless access and Wi-Fi are wireless, and it's going to be common. So, do you guys think there's a security concern over the vulnerabilities that will come over those channels?
Yeah, so I already pointed out the mobile side, the cellular side, but we have to consider the Wi-Fi itself. That's why Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 6E started this, but Wi-Fi 7 comes with so much security, and it actually requires to go to yet another level of protection. It actually restricts the older ways of authentication and only uses the new ways of authentication a user. And this is important because it imposes the latest strategies, the latest encryption algorithms, and the latest security restrictions from using WPA3, etc. So we will have probably more to come. Knowing Wi-Fi Alliance and Broadband Forum, we all work together towards securing the Wi-Fi, not only by restricting the access, but also implementing innovations and new technology in security, which will protect more the customers and the CPE. So the days of somebody sitting outside in a car trying to penetrate your gateway are probably gone. I don't want to dismiss them 100%, but it's definitely much more security now than before. And if we as operators restrict more and more that security and require users and customers basically to use the latest security advancements and forget about the old ones, basically restrict them not to be available in the gateway, that's probably the way to go for now.
I have one thing to add to that. The devil is always in the implementation details.
Right.
You can have a standard that looks fantastic on paper, but we've shown with some of the implementations of WPA2 or WPA that sometimes they haven't. Maybe it's something the way the standard's written, but sometimes there's a hole in it. But in particular implementations, the way firmware has been done. So, well, it's
Definitely
just
agree.
time will tell on that kind of thing. But all you can do is design standards that are that seem good, and then you just wait and see what happens and how they're implemented. So, we've got another question there, I think.
Yeah, yeah, you said,
Jason.
yeah. If you expect all of these lines of action to align with upcoming regulations, such as the European CRA.
I don't know, to be honest. I'd love to be able to say whether we could align with it, but
Yeah,
we've got so many priorities pulling us in various different directions. It's what we have, what we can work on in the limited time we have available, basically. So this isn't my
right.
full-time job. So,
Yeah,
Well, and I
Jason,
would point out that there are only so many lines of input into Purple Foundation, right? And
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
the I would say that ones like that would be sort of a giant fire hose of information that Purple would have to be constantly processing. So
Yeah.
yeah, one other thing, recently FCC has changed the approach on broadband. I would suggest please research and see. This will be probably a very big impact on the industry, and this probably will also come to Purple as requirements. I don't want to go into details, but
right.
you have probably seen some news recently, and I would suggest that we all take that seriously because this will also this process will also include considering new security measures.
You got a comment about fixed wireless access. As far as I'm aware, we're already so Purple Security doesn't work on fixed wireless access directly, but the functionality has already been started, as far as I know. So yeah, it's
Well,
coming.
if we own the modem, we still have the chance to
Yeah,
impose some restrictions. So
yeah.
we can try.
All righty, buddy. thank you very much for coming. Like I said, if you consented to be contacted by us after when you signed up, we'll package up these slides and send them out to people shortly after. And then this video will be available on the Purple YouTube channel. So go check out the Purple YouTube channel too, especially because all of the stuff that we did at the Purple Summit is up there too.
Yeah, I would like to thank everyone dialing in, and especially Jason and Brandon. Jason for the excellent organization, and Brandon for agreeing to come and work with me as a team
And
to
thank you, Evgeny, for
co-present.
doing all of the work up front.
Not exactly. That's not true. Actually, majority of the work has been done in the group, and you were leading it. So I would say the slides were a result of that particular work that we have done together, and
That's because
especially
I'm
your
good
lead.
at that's because I'm good at talking. That's why.
Thank you. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right, guys. Thank you, and do stay on the lookout for future Purple webinars. We'll probably be doing one of these every couple of months, so keep your eyes open. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.